Committee meeting of Tuesday, May the 17th, 2011 to order. The next order of business is the approval of the April 19 committee minutes.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number 3, consideration of a bid award to Utility Services Associates, LLC for water distribution system leak detection survey and other related contract services.
This is really a follow-up to the item we had on the last board agenda, where we had bid this work and the bids had come in remarkably underbid, and we needed to add substantial quantities onto this item to still use the budget we have allocated for the leak detection program. And so we went and did a quick additional bid to use the remaining capacity, and that kept us in a good position in terms of the procurement process. So this really just represents taking that next portion of the budget and going through a procurement process to award that work.
Any comments? Is there a motion to recommend this?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The third quarter budget amendments.
Everyone should have the third quarter amendments in their packet, and I know there's description of each amendment, and a couple of them are essentially just reallocations of funds that are already in the budget. So I thought what I might do is maybe take any questions if there were any about any specific items.
I guess a couple of things. On the last and next to last page, where it talks about offsetting revenue and it in solid waste, and it says $1,040,000. And I noticed it said that over here, but have we not?
Well, what this
is
is, where we're doing full costing for solid waste collection, it's actually that department's use of the transfer station. So essentially, that's why it's in the expenses as well as in the revenues.
Okay, so it's just a wash for that.
Exactly.
Okay, well, I saw it was exactly the same amount of money, but I didn't understand it until your explanation. Thank you. I don't know of anything else. We shifted things around because of the extra pay increase.
Exactly.
Was a big part of it.
Exactly.
Or almost all of it, I guess.
And what about the Regional Transit Authority membership? What about that?
Well, what it is, it's in appropriations. So since appropriations needs to have sufficient funds, in essence, it's just to get it budgeted where it wasn't budgeted previously.
So you're putting it in, but it wasn't there before.
It was an oversight last
yeah.
year, and it was accidentally left out.
But those are appropriations that we receive outside the city?
Well,
Those are
they're-
outside funding.
Yeah, outside
Yeah.
funding, all of that would be to cover that amount, that 5,622? It's not
Well,
going to
yeah.
come up from our general fund, is it?
It is a
Yeah, it
general
is.
fund
Yeah, it
expense.
is a general fund item.
But we're going to get appropriated funds to come in through, what, grants or anything, or not?
No,
Is
that appropriation section covers the funding that you provide to outside organizations that provide a service or that you allocate dollars to.
Okay,
And we
so it
put
is coming from
we
us.
put the regional transit
That's what I
membership
thought.
in there, and it has typically been in there. It didn't get budgeted in that group in this budget.
You know, I don't understand why that's so high.
It's per, isn't it?
And it's
It's
a per capita dollar amount. It's just allocated that way to all the members.
And in the, I was going to say, in the 2012 budget, this is included.
Yeah.
So even though it was an oversight in
Yeah.
2011.
Right, so we're not studying that. I didn't see that.
If you haven't been to one of the Regional Transit Authority meetings,
Yeah, I haven't.
they're in Nashville,
Yeah.
they're pretty interesting. So I attend those
Yeah, I have.
monthly now. Follows the MPO. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been to-
That's a good suggestion.
And they just
I think-
reorganized the RTA, which you all remember passing that, and
Right.
the purpose of that was to change their structure some, if you remember correctly, so they could do some bonding, and also it has to do with generating revenue possibly for referendums on transit.
Any other comments or questions, I guess we would say? So we need then to recommend this to the board.
Move we recommend the amendments to the full board.
Second.
Any other discussion about this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. And I guess the big thing, the budget presentation.
Thank you. I've given all the board members, and I think others in attendance, a copy of the presentation. And I'll take just a little bit of time to go through this with you if I could, and then we'll be glad to take questions at the end. But I want to take this opportunity to present the budget to you. Yeah, I don't think we have any music or laser show this time around. Due to budget constraints, we're not able to do that. Yeah, so we're going unplugged tonight. Anyway, yeah, it was slightly amplified. Well, good evening. I do want to take this opportunity to present to you the recommended 2011-2012 operating budget for the City of Franklin. And want to thank the team that helped put this together. Our excellent leadership team, inclusive of our 2 assistant city administrators. Our finance department plays an important role, and Mike Lowe as our comptroller is a key player in that. And then each and every department really contributes to this effort. And we're here today because of the efforts of many, many people that have put this together and help us put together, I think, a solid spending and work plan for the year ahead. Let me go to the first slide is just an overall focus, and this is something that we developed a couple years ago, actually when we met with the bond rating agencies to try to help frame what we do. And really there are 3 pillars to what we focus on: the management overall of our city operations to make sure they're effective and efficient. And you see there we look at high quality services. We benchmark our services against other communities to see how we're doing and see where we can improve, with an overall focus of being as efficient and effective as we can and deliver high quality services to our citizens. And then community development, which is both economic development and just the quality of life within our community, looking at high development standards, an excellent workforce within our community, and leveraging those into private investment in our community. And as we say at the bottom, playing offense as a community, competing for jobs, families, and visitors that make those choices every day about where they spend their dollars. And then the third pillar is a strong financial base. It's really at the heart of everything we do. We have to have that to back us up, and we do that through conservative budgeting and good policy work, long-term financial perspectives, along with the reality check of what our day-to-day needs are. And some of the key benchmarks within that is in particular our AAA bond rating, which is in place with both Standard & Poor's and Moody's, and that AAA, or that double AAA, if you will, puts us in the very top echelon of communities across the country, and that is an important element for us to keep in place because it's an important benchmark of your community. It not only looks at your organization's financial strength, but also the local economy and where we look in that regard, and gives us a good basis for judging that. And it also translates into the lowest possible cost to borrow when we do need to go to bond markets to fund projects, et cetera. We get the most efficient use of our dollars in doing that. Let me give you a quick overview of the budget overall. The general fund budget, which is our primary operating budget, is at just under $53 million. That is a 3% increase over the current budget. This is still, though, significantly lower than where we were just a few years ago. It's 11% below the budget that was adopted for fiscal year 2008-2009. So much of the savings and efficiencies that we've identified to make our budgets work over the last few years are still very much in place and are part of us making the budget work today. The total operating budget of all the operating funds is just a little bit over $80 million. Overall, our budget is structurally balanced and our service levels are maintained. The next is just a graphic depiction of that, of those, both the all-fund budget and the general fund budget. I'll give you just a couple highlights of the general fund overall. As we stated, essential services are maintained. That means there are no layoffs of full-time and existing staff. We've been able to, again, maintain all of our staffing. We do include a 2% general salary increase in this budget that would take effect December 23rd of 2011. So essentially at mid-year of the fiscal year, which is similar to what we did this year. We do have a targeted use of our reserves for capital expenditures, and this is a number that we've had that as an element in our budget over the last several years, and we have gradually drawn this down so that it is a lower and lower portion of our budget, but it is in there this year to help us work with a portion, about 20% of our capital purchases. One element in this budget is also that I can't report on in as great a detail as we typically do at budget time, is where our property tax rate will be. We do not have the reassessment calculation. There's a 5-year reassessment process we go through. We have not received those final numbers to know exactly how our rate will calculate out. I will tell you that the planning assumptions within this budget are conservative. They rely on essentially a moderate growth of the numbers we've used over the past few years, and we do not anticipate that translating into any increase. And in fact, our understanding of what's happened with valuations, we believe we'll have a decrease in our property tax rate as a result of the reassessment process. But we don't have those final numbers yet. Hopefully we'll have that soon and have that in time for us to make the actions we need to in setting the property tax rate. But we anticipate that going down. We don't anticipate asking for any increase beyond that adjusted rate. So that is where we are with that element. Those are the highlights of the budget that is there in place. But when we looked at the budget and we went into this process, we try to have the end in mind when we do that. And some of those key elements are maintaining high quality services, still making key investments in our operations and in the future of the community, enhancing our competitive position as a community. One of the things we try to think about every day is that we are competing against other communities. We are, people are making choices, and our community needs to be in a good position to compete well for that investment. And then also, one of the things as we're coming out of an economic slowdown, we've had a lot of focus on the challenges and the hardship associated with that, and rightfully so, but we can't lose focus on the opportunities that still are before us. So philosophically, one of the things we're trying to do as an organization is move beyond the challenge and into the possibilities and opportunities that still lie before us, even though we're still faced with some economic realities along the way. And then everything we do, even though we're a dynamic, developing, growing community, still work on maintaining the unique character of Franklin. Now, looking at the specific numbers of it, and the basic fundamental question of where the money comes from is pretty similar to the last few budgets. We've got sales tax carrying the lion's share at 44%, our intergovernmental revenue of about a quarter of the total general fund revenue, and property tax adjusted for the portion that goes into debt service, netting that out, is about 13% of our general fund revenue. The next category just sort of looks at the general expenditure category. So where does the money go in terms of how we spend it? And we spend about 2/3 of that budget on personnel-related costs, salaries and benefits for our employees. City government is definitely a people-oriented business. We achieve most of our services through our employees, and so that's reflected in this. I will tell you, as a point of comparison, this number was over 70% last year. It's now adjusted down to about 67%. We'll talk about some of the reasons why later on. Our general other expenses, sort of contracts and materials, is about a quarter of that budget, and then our capital expenditures around 7%. When you look at it by function, again, another answer to that, where does the money go? You look at the functional areas of city government, approximately half in the public safety category, about 15% in our development areas, economic and community developments areas, 10% in streets, about 7% in our administration and finance, and then parks about 5%, or just some highlights of that. The next chart is one we've focused in a number of times in the past. I want to show you that again. This just sort of summarizes revenue versus expenditures, and then that green bar represents where our reserves are projected or have been actually and are projected at the end of the fiscal year. And you'll see where we are right now. We're projecting the fiscal year currently to end with us at a reserve of around $24.6 million. The 2012 budget has that going down slightly to about $24 million. Again, all well above, from a percentage standpoint, the policy set by the board, which is 33%. So we'd be around 50% at the end of this fiscal year, and projected if we spend every dollar in this budget, which I don't think will likely happen, but if you take that assumption, but we also receive every dollar of revenue that we assume in this budget, we would end up at about 46%, significantly above what your policy mandates. And actually, the chart at the bottom really gives you the 2012 number. That 2012 number didn't make the graphic. I just noticed that. 46% of your general fund.
However, that is the lowest in number-wise in 10 years.
Right. It is it's using a full assumption of using every dollar in the budget and projecting it out as well. The next chart just sort of summarizes the general fund revenues and gives you a comparison. Local taxes is inclusive of both property tax and sales tax, and you'll see that's around a 4% increase. See some growth in our permit activity, see our intergovernmental growth as well, and then see the decrease again in the amount of fund balance that is being projected in this budget. And then the next couple slides, or a few slides, will go through some of those revenue issues and highlights. The local sales tax, as we talked about again, is our largest single revenue source of over $23 million. We are projecting a growth of 4% in this budget. We've now had 14 consecutive months, as we sit here today, of sales tax growth. And that is, that's a good trend, and we're starting to come up against stronger numbers, growth months against growth months. And so we think whereas in the last year we saw some pretty high growth months, 8, 9, 10% even in certain months, since we're coming up against stronger comparative numbers, that range is probably going to slide more towards I would guess, the 3 to 6%, and we're using a 4% overall growth. The state is using somewhere around 3% for their general assumption on sales tax. One of the things we highlight when we look at this is having a significant dependency on sales tax does make us more susceptible to changes in the economy. That sales tax is one of those places that does get impacted more quickly when the economy experiences a slowdown. And so we know that's part of why we have the reserves at the relative high level that we do compared to many other cities, but it is also a long-term issue to look at, and one of the long-term issues we identify is looking at opportunities to have greater diversification among our revenue sources, and just to continue to have that bear in mind. Property tax is the next one I wanted to talk about. Again, we talked about the 5-year reassessment process, so we don't have our rate yet. We fully expect that this will mark a 22nd consecutive year without a property tax rate increase in the city of Franklin. And one of the things the board did a couple years ago is move to allocate directly a portion of the property tax to pay our general fund debt service obligation. We're doing that again this year. So when you look at the total property tax that comes into the city, 44% of it is going to debt service within this budget. And again, one of the things we've highlighted, we don't have this in final form. When we get the full reassessment, we'll see it, but this past year and the last several years, we've been the lowest property tax rate among Tennessee cities with a population of over 25,000. Next chart just tracks that steady growth in property tax over the last 10 years, and you'll see that there on that. And again, it breaks down the debt service versus general fund usage there. This tracks the basic property tax rate, again, on that on that 5-year cycle at 43 cents has been the current rate. We expect that to be adjusted when we get the reassessment. The next slide really, I think, is an interesting one to look at. It charts, the top chart, the dark line, is your nominal rate. What's on that chart we just saw, which is the actual rate over time, and this goes from 1980 through 2011. And that pink line, the lower line, is essentially the effective rate, the adjustment of that rate or the production of that property tax for inflation. So that's roughly the equivalent of around, I think is that 13 cents in the current year?
13 cents.
So if you adjust that over time, that 43 cents is really more like 13 cents comparatively. So we've just done that calculation to sort of give you a sense of the impact over time.
The pink one is,
That's really the effective rate of that property
Purchasing
tax,
power.
purchasing power of that property tax.
the real property tax, it's up there.
Yeah. So that's something we want to try to give you a sense of the relative impact of that revenue in our budget. The next chart is the item I talked about before with the other cities in Tennessee, the larger cities. There are about 27 cities that are 25,000 or greater in population. You'll see on that, and it's hard to see on the screen, but we are the lowest city property tax rate in that group at 43 cents. The high in that group's over $3. So you can see it's a pretty wide range when you compare it across the state, but we are the lowest within that group. The next chart graphically depicts the ratio between sales tax and property tax and how that has altered over time. They've come a little closer to one another in the last couple years, in part because we had some down years in sales tax. And you might remember that property tax showed a pretty steady growth every year, and we had 23 consecutive months of negative performance in property tax between 2008 and early part of 2010. So you'll see that reflected somewhat in adjusting that ratio, but it gives you a sense of how those relate to one another. This is another way of showing that same relationship. And I will point out to you, in most communities in Tennessee, it's probably the reverse, where the property tax would be close to 2 times the amount of what sales tax produces for that local government. But because of the magnitude of activity that we have with a large regional mall and other significant commercial activity in our community, it's really the reverse in Franklin. So you would probably see that reversed in most other communities. Intergovernmental revenue, that is, again, up again this year, in part because the state has taken on the collection of business tax. Also, we have adjusted that with the best estimate we could for the updated census number.
That's something we probably need to talk a little bit more about when we get to some specifics or
Yeah,
something.
we use some per capita numbers to help estimate that, and we can address that for you too. The Hall income tax is one that we always receive kind of after the fact, so we just sort of carry the number from the prior years, what we've used at this point, and that's a tax paid on realized earnings. I think with the market performance over the last year, you probably could make a case for that number growing, but we did not make any assumption on that. If that does happen, that'll just be a windfall to us. We did include just sort of a flat number, not knowing what that'll be.
It's still the same as well.
Yeah, we just held that at the current estimate. So the other taxes, just to summarize what some of those are, the local beer tax that we receive, the gross receipts, the liquor tax. Hotel Motel actually goes into its own fund, but just wanted to highlight for you, we've seen strong growth in that Hotel Motel tax over the last year, and that has continued. We will have some new product coming online in 2012 as well in the hotel area, so a pretty significant increase in some rooms coming in the pipeline. In terms of fees and other income, that's inclusive of franchise fees, which has shown a steady growth and continues to, we're continuing to project that. We're seeing some rebound in permit activity and permit fees. We've actually dampened some of that based on some of the recommendations we got and what we're seeing in building and neighborhood services and in our development group, but still do see some return in that area. Court fines and costs are part of that, and you see some of the other elements. And this just shows the story we talked about before in terms of fund balance. Just around $24 million is projected at the end of this budget. The next chart, I won't go into all of these, but this is the by department summary and just sort of breaks it out in one slide, one page, where all the departments are in terms of their individual budgets, and breaks it out by the broad categories of personnel, operations, and capital. And as we talked about, personnel is by far the biggest portion of the expenditure categories. And some of the elements or key elements to consider when you look at personnel costs, again, we've included a 2% general wage increase in there, and that'll be effective December 23rd of this year. We maintain about 43 vacancies, full-time vacancies in the general fund. When you look at the budget overall, that's a pretty consistent number from what we've had the last two budgets. It is not necessarily the same positions, I'll tell you that. That's a discussion we have with each department, and there are a number of places where we've adjusted, and a position we may have held vacant last year or 2 years ago, we may have made the operational decision to go ahead and fill, and so we've made some adjustments with that. But as a whole, it's approximately the same number we've had the last couple years. We have 694 full-time equivalent positions overall in the budget. We do have a few new positions, and a couple of those some of those I would highlight for you. We have a purchasing analyst position that we think can really help us leverage our purchasing power across the organization, add some resources there. That's essentially a two-person office right now, and we think a third person will help us do a better job working with departments, and also bringing on some better tools to generate greater vendor activity and vendor interest in our business. We do have an HR analyst position that we're adding. This will essentially help us put a little more personnel into our overall HR efforts, and in particular our benefits package. You look at the growth in our employment over the last 10, 15 years, and we have not increased the staffing in that HR area, and think that is needed and due at this point. We do also have an athletics crew chief that we've added in the Parks Department that will help be a working supervisor, help provide additional both oversight and hours into our athletic field efforts there. And then we also have a accounting manager position that is part of our revenue customer service area. We're managing a large number of accounts now, especially as you look at our assessment districts that are in play, over 600 accounts there. And so we feel it's necessary to provide the appropriate level of service to have someone dedicated to that. Now, there are some other areas where we've eliminated positions, so the net impact is around three new positions in total when you look at it. We are continuing to use seasonal and part-time employees in targeted areas to help stretch our dollars, and in particular in parks, streets, our revenue management area. Those are all areas where we've tried to be more creative in using those seasonal and part-time positions, both to stretch our dollars, but also respond to peak needs and services of our employees and of our operations. We do have, we are going to be able to maintain health insurance costs overall, we believe, in this budget, and at no additional cost to our employees. So that increase is going to truly be an increase. It's not going to get eaten up by other benefit cost changes to them. We are continuing to use a turnover factor in this budget, as we have the last couple budgets, and that's essentially where we make an assumption that there's some turnover in our personnel over time. It just naturally happens, and so we do a net decrease in our personnel budgets to help account for that. That helps us stretch some budget dollars across the whole budget. So we've successfully used that in the last couple budgets. We're going to use that again at this level. We still think that's a pretty conservative number.
Is that an increase?
It's approximately where we are now. We tried to factor in all of the human resource-related costs in terms of salary and benefit. We applied 3%, but only to salary last year. So we applied 3.5% to salary, but it's approximating the full cost of benefits. So we feel like we're in generally the same place because we've used that number and tried to factor in the full cost of not just pay, but other benefits as well. So we think we're roughly in the same place we were a year ago in terms of that. We calculated it slightly differently. Our historic number is somewhere closer to 6%. Our actual number this year has been maybe a little bit lower than that, but still a good bit above the 3.5% range. And overall personnel costs are down about $300,000 when you compare it to budget, this year's budget versus the proposed budget. And the biggest reason for that is the pension cost decrease, which is the last element on that slide. And this graphic depicts the change in our investment in pension. And this is really the result of the three key elements that I would highlight for you. 2 years ago, the board made a $2 million investment, one-time investment to help bolster where we were in terms of the pension. And that has paid off well. And when we did it at the time, we said this will not only help stabilize the pension and put us in a better position, but it will have savings each year as we go forward, and that has happened. We were fortunate in some ways in timing the market well. We benefited at hitting it at a relatively low point and then have benefited from the recovery in financial markets. The second point is we've made good market and investment decisions along the way. Our performance has been very strong over the last 2 years, especially the last year. And then the final point that has helped this all come together has been the adjustments we've made in the program overall to still maintain its attractiveness and its benefit to our employees, but make it more financially sustainable over time. That has real impact on the future of this pension and the future financial demands on the pension. As a point of comparison, it's $850,000 less than the current budget in terms of what we're going to need to contribute. And again, this is based on the actuarial calculation. So we're not cutting any corners here. We're doing what the actuary tells us we need to put in. And as $850,000 less than the current budget. And as another point of comparison, in fiscal year 2010, it was over 12% of our general fund budget was going into pension. It is, and this budget, 6.8%. So that's a dramatic improvement there. We've really gotten some traction on that and are glad that we're in that position. The pension committee met yesterday, and the calculation at the end of the first quarter of 2011 was that we were at a 94% funding level. That number in beginning of 2009 was at about 68%. So that's meaningful progress, and just are pleased that we've made that progress there. Next slide just highlights the appropriations, which we talked a little bit about in the item before this, which is the funding to outside organizations. And this is essentially flat in terms of the outside organization funding. The only exception to that is we have a contract with Williamson County Animal Control, and that has a contractual escalation in it, and so that is provided in here. Everything else in terms of all the outside agencies you fund are held at the current budget level. Just a couple other highlights within the general fund. We are reinstituting the tuition reimbursement program this year in the new budget. We're recommending the reinstitution of that program. I think that's an important investment in helping our employees get their degree. I will note for you, though, I've asked that we make some improvements in that program overall, enhance it, make it truly a reimbursement program in terms of how we pay out to our employees, update some of the standards related to online courses, and strengthen the approval that happens at the department director level so that we are clearly identifying that course of study that employee goes into is a an appropriate one for their career path at the city. So, that program has worked well. We held it and sort of suspended it during this budget because of the hard times that we were facing and some of the tough decisions we had to make, but are going to be able to, I believe, reinstate it in the coming year. The next two bullets really relate to one another. We went into a self-insurance approach with workers' compensation. That has paid off very, very well for the city this year. We've seen it do what we'd hoped it would do. We are just getting to implement our citywide safety and safety training program. We have filled that position now that was approved in this budget and was part of the calculation of the savings in that program, and have managed to fill that with an internal candidate that knows the city and I think will be really, really effective in bringing that forward. And so we're going to see that, I think, pay off in terms of managing our costs and workers' compensation and keeping our employees safe, which is the bottom line there as well. We do have funding for some software improvements. Our Human Resources Department is looking at a human resources information system. We don't pretend to have that fully funded in here, but we do have some dollars, about $100,000 to go towards some work there. That will be an issue we may very well take up later in the year as we look at it, but we're looking at both our existing system and improvements that could be made there, as well as other options that are out there in the market that can help us have a truly integrated human resource information system that works with everything from employee applicants to benefits to employee evaluations, the whole package, and would help us be more efficient and effective in how we do that. And then we've got our development or permitting software that we're looking at that will help streamline what we do in the permitting process. And as it works across multiple departments, there are some software options out there we think can help us, and I believe that's funded around $35,000 in this budget. But again, we think that'll improve our customer service there and improve the inner working that happens in the development process among multiple departments. This slide just highlights the various other special revenue funds that we have throughout the budget and gives you the key pages to look at. I'm going to highlight just a couple of key issues in those areas, and then we'll wrap up. Street aid, which is where we receive the local portion of the gas tax, is at $1.75 million. I want to highlight for you one of the things we asked the Streets Department to do and our Director, Joe York, to do is to develop a comprehensive plan for our street resurfacing program across the whole city and all the streets that we're responsible for. And Joe developed that probably about a year and a half ago on about a 12-year cycle. This does not fund that 12-year cycle. It's probably about $1 million a year short from doing that. So what that does is that pushes out that cycle further. I would estimate, rough estimate, that's somewhere around a 20-year cycle, but the reality is we'll prioritize those streets. The more heavily traveled streets will happen more frequently, and the typical neighborhood street might not happen as frequently. And we're just going to have to look at that, and that's really something for the board to be aware of. Given the tight budget, we're not able to put an additional general fund subsidy into this and to do more streets as much as we might like to. And it's sort of a service level decision, and we'll be glad to look at some options in that if you'd like to at some point. But that's what we're working with right now. Is the dedicated funding that comes in is the source that we're using for our street resurfacing program at $1.75 million. Oops, I just hit the wrong button. The next one is our solid waste, and there's a number of elements here. We've really made progress in this fund. 3 years ago, the general fund subsidy was $3 million, and I think a year or two before that it was more like $4.5 million. So over time that has come down significantly. Part of that has been we've made small but regular increases in the residential rate over the last 3 years. This budget does not include another increase that we're going to hold at $15 a month as a rate. Although a lot of private haulers are probably near double that in other communities, but we are at $15 a month, and we're going to hold that. But the overall general fund subsidy, you'll see year to year, this budget has gone down from about $1.5 million and the proposed budget has it at about $670,000.
Is that last year's budget?
It was 1.5 in the current budget. The proposed budget brings it down to about 670,000. So this, and the other part of that, we've had some revenue increases over time, but we also are seeing the impact of diversion. Both the curbside recycling program, the Blue Bag program, which has been regularly around 40%. The last one we saw actually bumped up over 50%. So we're seeing some success there. That does help. What we do in terms of yard waste pickup and the curbside and the compost system that we have also translates into to items that used to go to the landfill not going to the landfill anymore. So that all contributes to this as well. On this is really the only other area that we have a rate increase in this budget is the commercial rates within our solid waste operation. We operate a transfer station, so we have private haulers come in and bring their waste, and it comes to our transfer station, and then we haul it to the landfill. That rate has not been adjusted over the last 2 years. And in the last 2 years, we've seen significant revenue, or not revenue, but fee increases on our end that have really impacted us. Over 27% increase in tipping fees alone in the last 2 years that the city has had to absorb, and did not translate those into commercial rates. We're proposing that we do that now. The other element to that we are really feeling is the increase in fuel costs. We burn 2 gallons of fuel for every ton that we haul to the landfill. So that has a real cost impact as well. And so we are proposing 2 elements here, a 20% increase in the commercial fee, moving from $35 up to $42 per ton at the transfer station, and then the implementation of a $2 per ton fuel surcharge in this structure as well. Those would come before you as a rate increase. Again, we're not increasing the residential rate at this point, but feel that it's appropriate to make the adjustments in the commercial rate to realize the true costs that we're now facing and absorbing. And then just to wrap up, I think the budget that we're bringing forward to you today manages to strike a balance of living within our means but still maintaining essential services, meeting the expectations of our citizens, and still being strategic and being a competitive city that has excellent services, excellent quality of life. We are seeing some recovery. We're starting to see that. We're being cautious about the level of that, and glad to see especially sales tax starting to rebound, and then some of the permit activity also starting to rebound. But we're not there. We're still well below where we were 3 to 4 years ago in terms of the level of revenue and that inflow, and really are anticipating that to continue to just slowly come out of that, but not probably see dramatic increases at this point. We are in compliance with the board policies overall, and have reserve at the end of this current fiscal year, as well as the projected new proposed budget well above the board's policies in terms of reserves. So with that, and again, I want to offer my thanks to the city team that really contributed countless hours in the organization to look at virtually every line item and take a hard look at what we're doing in terms of services, what the expectations are of our community, and what we need to do to meet those expectations. I'm proud to have worked with them and the efforts they put into putting this budget forward, and be glad to take any questions you have. And we have a lot of good experts out in the audience as well that can help answer any of your questions.
Well, first of all, thank you for bringing a budget again that reflects our reality here. And once we had to start cutting, it was kind of good to see at least an increase this year, even though very modest.
Modest, but yeah.
Modest, certainly, even by, yearly projections not that many years ago. But I know that has taken not only the main team, but many of our departments too, have had to make some difficult decisions about that. What about some questions or comments?
I had some specific questions. Have we bracketed our diesel cost on solid waste so that if it goes above a certain point that we'll have an additional?
What we've done at this point,
Increase.
what we've really set out as a baseline is really the lower level of that. As long as we're above $3 a gallon, that we would keep that surcharge in place. We would just, I would suggest we just review that on a regular basis as we're going through and what those fuel costs do, and then make adjustments just like we do on rates when we look at what happens with tipping fees, et cetera. So I think that, I would suggest that's something we just look at on a regular basis, just like we do all of our fees.
So is that something that we could increase without some motion from the board?
At this point, we've put it in as a specific action of the board and have anticipated that we would come back to you on adjustments to that. And one of the things we did talk about is tracking that against a certain, CPI or some sort of barometer and have that sort of adjust on an inflationary basis. We did not do that yet. That's something to look at, and that's something to look at on various fees to at least consider, to have sort of a direct adjustment based on some, neutral standard that gauges inflation. We haven't done that yet, but that's something to look at and something we could consider if you'd like to going forward.
Another question about our roadway resurfacing. We've gone maybe to an effective 20-year replacement. I realize we're trying to do this without additional funds from the general fund, but there's got to be a point that it's going to be much more expensive if we allowed these to degrade too much. So you mentioned maybe there would be some other options that we could look at other than the...
Well, yeah, you'd have to make choices within your general fund. It would really be the most immediate option for you. One of the things that we're going to continue to look at, and we have our schedule, but we also look at the quality of streets, and our streets inspectors and Joe and his team do look at that along with the replacement cycle or the resurfacing cycle, if you will. So I think that's what we're going to have to gauge. We've made some improvements in our repair capabilities. The infrared truck is just coming on board. So I'd like to see the full impact of having that improved capability and repair, so that our repairs are maybe both more efficient and maybe more sustainable over time, as well as what we hope. And so I'd like to see the full impact of that in conjunction with this funding level as we go forward. But that is one of the choices to look at. If and something we could bring back to you is a service level of, if you wanted to target a year or target a dollar amount, we could kind of work back from that and give you a sense of what's a 15-year look like, or if we can put X dollars in this, what does that do to this? We could give you at least some sense of that impact on a service level.
Can I piggyback on that?
It would take us a little time, but if you want to go down that path, we could give you that, not only for this budget, but going forward.
Well, I would at least want us to look at this as a priority for increase in the next year. Once funds become available, that this should have a high priority for the next budget year.
Yeah. I just want to piggyback on that, because we were talking earlier, I think we were talking about what Joe actually needs for this year. We're 1.7 million that comes into us, but really to do the job for the schedule we have, we need about another $1 million. Is that right?
That's rough numbers. Each year varies a little bit,
So,
but that's approximately about $1 million a year.
so that would,
But we also ought to say that historically, we have not been on a 12-year period. I mean, I've lived in 2 different subdivisions, and I've said, 15 or 20 years, maybe
Yeah.
one of them got done in 20 years, the other one after 17, I don't know that it ever got.
Well,
Yeah, that's a good point.
But they
Our
were,
developer did ours the last
we got the new infrared truck, I want to see that in use.
but I, I also have been
Oxford
told
Glen.
that the materials may not have been as good and sturdy in the last years as they were maybe 20, 30 years ago, whatever.
There is some variation in
Yeah.
the quality asphalt over time. It is a more aggressive schedule than what we
It
have
is,
actually
it
done.
is, yes.
But I think there's a real benefit to us systematically looking at the whole system and trying to look at what makes sense to do on a replacement cycle, and then we can, a resurfacing cycle, but we can vary that based on the funding level and the service level that you'd like.
The other question I had on our replacement of vehicles and things like that, are we still holding back on some of those that maybe we couldn't do the full cycle?
Well, that's kind of a yes and no answer. We have made some progress on that, and in fact, a year ago, the board approved some leasing capacity for us to do the leasing of equipment. We did not use that it's really lease purchase. When I say lease, we're purchasing it, but we're using a lease to spread the cost out over time. And we were able to get such affordable rates that really made some sense for us to look at. And you all did approve some capacity. We did not use all of that in this year. There's a significant portion we didn't use, and so that is reflected in this budget. We're doing I would say a full replacement on the police cruisers that are needed, especially the ones that are on patrol and most heavily used, and getting us closer to a 5 to 6 year replacement cycle on the most heavily used vehicles in that area. We are also replacing our rescue units within the fire department. We've had some had some payout on that in terms of maintenance that was paid for by the manufacturer over a period of time because of some deficiencies with the equipment, and not just the city, but a number of other communities that purchased those vehicles had that. That has now expired, so it's going to be very costly to maintain those, and we'd like to go ahead and move to replace those. And so that's also rolled into that. And we're also going to move towards the first year of a 2-year payment for the replacement of one of our ladder trucks that's over 15 years old. So we are making some progress in some key areas, but there are some other areas that we are deferring some maintenance. Staff went through those very carefully, and department directors really looked hard at what they really needed to replace and what they could continue to work with and live with. And there are a number of places that you can see where we may have taken 2 older vehicles and replaced them with 1 new vehicle, because the greater functionality of that vehicle, and that was a better benefit, and the older equipment didn't quite meet our needs, but we could get it done with 1 instead of 2 in certain places. And other places we're just continuing to make it work. The more we have the capabilities in our internal fleet maintenance, that helps us continue to make that equipment work. But that's an ongoing item for us to continue to be mindful of, because we are deferring in certain areas, and that's been part of what we've had to do to make our budgets work. I think we've gained some ground in this budget, but we're going to need to continue to look at that as we go forward.
Part of the point I'm trying to make is that I don't want the citizens to get used to say, oh, we can always get by with this level budget that we've kind of maintained over the last 3 years,
Yeah.
because there are trade-offs that we're making as far as replacements in some of the services that once our revenue comes back up, I would hope that we would fully fund these things to get back on a reasonable cycle.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, I was just, back to the general fund highlights on page 3. We're talking about the use of $568,000 for the reserve target for capital expense. What was the reduction from last year on that again?
The budgeted,
Percentage-wise or something?
7, yeah.
What
the
was it? It was
budgeted amount
quite-
was about $700,000. It was just under
Okay.
$700,000. Now, we had, the actual amount is going to be well over $1 million, in part because we
Right, I thought
had
it was.
some expenditures from the prior year push into the current
Oh.
year. We had a good chunk of street
Yeah.
resurfacing that, in part because of the flood, happened, and the cost ended up hitting this year, and that was part of your first quarter budget amendments, was, I think that was around $600,000 or $700,000 worth of street resurfacing from the prior year that ended up coming into this current year. So when you look at the actuals, it's actually significantly less. It's about 70% less. But when you look budget to
Yeah, I
budget,
thought it was
it's a
huge.
little over $100,000 less. 3
Okay.
years ago, that number was, from a budgetary standpoint, was at $3 million. So we have weaned ourselves off of that. We're not all the way off of it, but we have brought it down significantly. It's about 1/6 of what it was 3 years ago, from a budgeting standpoint. So, we're making progress there, but ultimately, we want to bring that down to zero.
Well, I thought that was something we really need to point out, because I think that's significant. And I think that's an excellent thing for our citizens to know that, as you said, we brought it down to 1/6, what it was a year ago. And that's, I think that's huge in this economy. And if you look at what other people are doing, other cities are doing, we're reducing it rather than increasing it, because so many people are increasing it. The other thing, thank you for that.
One of the things I'll highlight with that is it is what we call a structurally balanced budget, meaning our ongoing revenues and our ongoing expenditures are in balance.
Yep.
So we're not paying salaries, we're not paying costs, reoccurring costs with our savings account. We're not doing that. Just like in your household budget, you don't want to get in that situation. We are not in that situation here either. We're targeting those reserves towards a portion of our one-time cost element in this budget.
We've been doing that for what, 2 years? Or not?
Excellent.
Not really?
At least
good.
3.
From a
Russ might know.
budgeting point of view, we've been doing it for almost 10. I mean, there's been a raw budgeted, on the fund balance budgeted, but typically it's not being used.
Because we're down, our
Your overall.
fund balance is down $6 million in 3 years. Isn't that right? I think it is.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was a lot of capital then.
Yeah, and a portion of that,
2 years for pension.
yeah, 2 million of it, a
Yeah,
third of it was the
pension.
pension
Pension.
investment, so.
That was huge.
But still.
That was a huge chunk, so we don't have that now. Russ, where are we on this fuel hedging for this year? Have we locked into that yet?
We've actually locked in all of the fiscal year that we're talking about.
We're good?
What we're concerned about, we're good,
Right.
and
Okay.
we're at a relatively low rate. But remember, we've only hedged approximately 62%.
Okay, 62%? I don't know
So
about that.
that does leave us some exposure to the higher rates. We have not locked in any prices for the subsequent year. We're in
Is
the
it-
process of reviewing what the options are now.
Now, why do we go, tell me again why we only do that 62%. I mean, it's significant, but yet at the same time, we
Well-
still have a significant amount that's still open.
One reason is the statute that allows us to do that will only let us hedge what we actually use. So if we, for any reason, would use less than 100% of what we estimate, we would be in violation of the statute. So you want to pick some number less than that. Metro Nashville has picked a much higher number because their utilization is really a little bit more reliable than ours. They have transit buses all over the place and school buses and so on, so they know pretty close to what they're going to use. When we had Katrina come through in 2005 and when we had budget problems in 2008, because the revenues dropped precipitously, we asked our department directors to cut back on usage. So we want to leave a little cushion where if some disaster happened or something, and we were not using as much fuel as we might estimate, that we're well within the statute. The other reason is just conservatism. I mean, you have to realize this is the equivalent of buying insurance, and
Yeah,
we've been very fortunate because we thought the price would go up, and it did, and we've been the beneficiary of that. It could equally go down.
And it did right at first,
And
didn't
it
it?
did right at
Yes,
first,
it
a
did.
couple of months.
Yeah, but you know where it went, right back up.
But you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah,
Might be a better way
absolutely.
to say that.
The, wait a minute. Tax on list earnings. Oh, what do we have coming up that we're looking at for the hotel motel tax? We have jury coming online. Do we have anything else that we know of
There is an...
that's
Holiday Inn Express.
And then there's another Marriott property that's been
looking?
looking as well.
Okay, so
I
we
think
may
it just
have,
came in on
yeah,
a...
so jury should be
Minutes
coming
and
up
lines,
this year, this end of this year, is it?
Drury will be
Is it?
first part of next year.
Okay.
And that's substantial. At 400 and
this
something
budget.
rooms, it'll be larger than the Marriott or the Embassy. So
Exactly.
it'll be a big
So it'll be in
number.
this budget cycle. All right, and then you said something about 694 positions when you're talking about personnel. Is that
That's our-
exactly what we have total?
Yeah, that's our total general fund positions.
Okay. And how
All
many of
fund
those are
positions.
filled?
It's all funds.
Well, it's all
All
funds.
funds, sorry.
What?
694 total
Yeah.
It
positions.
includes water and
The water
solid
management and
waste,
solid waste are
stormwater.
in that.
Is that total positions we have currently filled?
No.
No,
Total
just
positions,
total
you've got
positions.
43 full-time vacancies.
And then we have 43 out of that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's what I wasn't understanding. Okay. Oh, okay, filled. And then the other thing was, I think I already got the questions answered about the software. And the street aid, I've got that. I guess that's it. Yep.
I guess I can say one or two things, and then we'll see if there's anybody in the audience who wants to make a comment. Tell me more about the business tax. I know that was, taken over by the state, and so where are we now in terms of how much we're getting back compared to how much we were collecting ourselves, and what's going to happen there? Is there any opinion about?
What was that?
The rest of
I would say, in a term that you'd understand, the jury is still out.
Okay.
There has been a movement afoot among a lot of counties to try
Take it
to take it back.
Okay.
The state spent a lot of time at the outset getting their systems in place, getting their staff in position. They had a rocky start, to say it kindly. They tell us that they are normalizing all of those conditions, and they're starting to make some improvements and get some of the results that they hoped for. If you recall, the reason that they wanted to do that is they have a reach that is much larger than ours. So if we have subcontractors on a building project that are out of state or in East Tennessee, we might be unable to reach them where the state can, certainly within the state, and they have agreements with other states, corresponding agreements where they're able to get to some people. It took them time to ramp up where they could check business tax returns versus sales tax reports, business tax returns versus subcontractor filings and subcontract, to find out if subcontractors had filed. We have some conservative numbers in here for the budget, but it is still very much an unknown. It's probably more of an unknown than the property tax or the sales tax. I would say that. But I do think they're probably catching up. I don't think we'll take that back over, at least not in this fiscal year that we're talking about. I think they need a little bit more time to see if they can do it or not and do it successfully. A lot of it will depend on how the legislature looks at that. But you do see in the numbers now where local taxes appear to have gone down and intergovernmental receipts, if you remember the pie chart, have gone way up. The reason, to a large extent, is you've got about $2.5 million of business taxes that have shifted from local to intergovernmental. But I think we're just kind of in a holding pattern right now until we have more information.
And we're going to know later, of course, about the property tax, whenever we get that information in. And the other thing I wanted to say was that I just was now catching up. This is really not about our committee, but I did read the write-up about our former mayor, John Srower, that came out in April, and I've just now seen it. I don't know whether the rest of you have seen it or not, but it was, is it called Town and County? Is that what it is?
Town and City.
Town and City.
It's the TML publication.
Yeah, that's right.
He made the back cover.
He made the, I mean, he made the whole back page. He made the whole back
I'll have to
page.
go back and look at
I
that.
know.
Town and country?
Town and City, is it?
Yeah,
Town City, oh, yeah,
Town
yeah.
City.
Town
Okay,
City.
good, okay. Okay, all right, what about some comments from anybody in the audience?
Mayor.
Great, go ahead.
Pearl's back there.
Mayor's.
Do you want me to yield to you, Mayor?
Oh, not at all. I would be honored for you to ask your questions, and I hope you ask the same ones I
I
have.
just want Mrs. Duker to talk a little bit about the local sales tax. The estimated growth that you all are proposing is approximately a 4%, where the statewide is looking at about a 3%. Just talk to us and our viewers a little bit about why you anticipate our local sales tax would be at least a whole percent higher than what the state is expecting.
Well, it's a judgment call. But
Yeah.
The actual performance over this last year
Has been.
has generally been about double. Their increase has been in the 3 to 4 range. Our total increase year to year is around 8.5%. So I think given that, that's still fairly conservative in terms of an approach. But as I said before, we're starting to come up against some stronger months. So that's got to be adjusted a little bit to realize that. So I still think that's very realistic. State's using 3 overall, we're using 4. You could probably make the case for being a little more aggressive, but we felt that that was the right balance to still have enough growth in there that you're not, cutting yourself short, but also being conservative enough that you think you're going to hit those numbers and not have a problem the other way where you over-projected.
And we overproject, I mean, we projected for this year relatively close to what we actually got.
We're a
That
little
was
bit above,
close,
but yeah,
okay.
we did. We essentially, last year, we held the budget number from the previous year intentionally. That wasn't a mistake. We did that because we'd started to see some rebound and we had seen some of the projections about economic activity and just sort of made a reasonable estimate. So we ended up proving to be pretty close to the mark. I think it's around $300,000 better than that, given the last number. And of course, we accrue it and we get it a couple months behind. So we're not all the way, it'll be a few months till we see all of those numbers roll in. It'll be a little bit into the next fiscal year till we see the full impact. But we're in a good position with that as well.
One other question, maybe I just don't understand. As gas prices go up, will we see more?
No.
That
It's
equate.
per gallon.
On the gas
On the
tax?
gas
Yes.
tax.
It's per
Unfortunately,
gallon.
it's per gallon.
Okay, so it's.
And in fact, you can make the case that as gas tax, or gas prices go up, our revenue goes down because people conserve
Right,
their
they
use
don't.
of
I'm not buying as
fuel.
much.
So they buy, less gas,
Yeah.
and that translates into less revenue for us in the state.
Yeah.
So it is a per gallon basis. It's not like sales tax where it's a percentage of the total. It's a per gallon.
Because I think there's a lot of people out there like me who think like, oh my God, maybe the cities and
Yeah.
states are getting more money.
That is not a windfall
But we
for
are
us.
not. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, go ahead.
Oh, I'd love to ask a few questions,
Thank
and I don't want to ask too many because I don't want to delay the implementation of the motion by a member of the committee and
Oh, that's
who can
right.
make a motion. But I did want to highlight that this
It's all for committee.
11% reduction that we've seen overall in our budget in a period of time does come with some issues such as streets and capital items and equipment that we may need. I had a question about capital expenditures. It's at 7% this year. I was just curious how it compared to other years. Do you recall right offhand?
It's a little bit higher.
It's a little bit higher
Yeah.
than the last 2 years, but historically, it's been higher than that.
Did you include in that the stormwater?
No.
Not, okay.
We're thinking more of the
Just
capital
general
equipment
fund.
portion that's in this general operating budget. And yeah, it's a little bit higher than last year. But like Russ said, historically, it's below where we've been.
Then the next thing was this purchasing power, the effective tax rate. I wanted you to explain that one more time.
Let me have Russ do it. He
Yeah.
was the expert that came up with that graph for us. So
I just did that because no one could understand.
Well, I'm sure somebody still doesn't.
If you'll go out to an investment website, be it Fidelity or, one of those big concerns, they'll show you how inflation eats away the purchasing power of the dollar.
Yeah.
The same is very much true with the property tax rate. I think the great misconception of most residential taxpayers is that every time an assessment goes up, we get a windfall. But what really happens is, according to state law, there's a certified tax rate calculated. And we are not allowed to get any windfall from an increase in assessment. So if the cities, you've probably read in the paper that the county assessment went up 10%. They, by statute, have to lower their tax rate by 10% so they get no windfall. They can then raise it if they wish. But the pattern within the city of Franklin has been, since 1989 or some year in the distant past, every time that the tax rate, that there was an assessment and values went up, the tax rate was lowered. So there was actually no new money coming in other than for new construction. And of course, over a long period of time, you have to provide more services for that new construction. The new building, new households, new commercial buildings, whatever they may be. So essentially, if you go back to 1989, we've not collected any more taxes on your house, for example, if you've lived here for that duration, than we did back then. Now, your assessment may have gone up because your neighborhood went up faster than the average. But in essence, you're paying the same. Well, in that 20-year or 30-year period, inflation has eaten away that tax revenue that we get to take in. So when you look at that chart and you see that we're at 43 cents, the actual purchasing power, or what we call the effective tax rate, is down to 12, 13 cents in what we are able to buy. And that's using the Consumer Price Index. Of course, a lot of people have problems with the Consumer Price Index. It doesn't fully account for inflation. It accounts too much. I would say that regardless what you think of the Consumer Price Index, if there was a governmental price index, our costs have gone up faster than that Consumer Price Index, because the things that we have to buy are cement and asphalt and health care for our people and pensions and benefits of that type. So I would say that probably the effective tax rate in that chart understates, if anything, the value of those taxes that we do get in. Now, we, unlike most communities, have been very fortunate in that the sales tax has grown, if not astronomically, certainly better than anyone could have really hoped for. But we do see the danger when that sales tax quits growing, or it begins to grow at a much slower rate. And that's pretty much what is forecasted across the board in the future, just because of the excesses that we've seen in the last few years.
The next question has to do with the business tax, and in the past I've seen the state periodically raid certain funds. For example, some of my fees that I pay as a physician go to the state, and they're supposed to maintain the Board of Medical Examiners and so on and so forth, but periodically the state decides that they need the money more than the Board of Medical Examiners. So are there appropriate safeguards in place to, or how do we know that we're going to get that money if the state is collecting? Or is that part of the issue?
Keep an eye on things.
That's very much the part of the issue. Along the lines of the medical analogy that you gave, before the state took over the business tax, they raised some limits on that and some fees that are collected. And they kept all of the increase and didn't bother to share them with cities or counties. The same thing is true of the local sales tax. They raised the cap effectively a few years back, but they kept the difference and didn't allow the cities to take advantage of that increase in the cap. So there's always a little bit of shenanigans going on with some of those revenues. We don't absolutely know what they've done, but I think they will be scrutinized as far as what they collect and that it's done appropriately. Cities and counties have a long record of what these businesses typically produce. So really one of the reasons that the Municipal League did not completely oppose the state taking it over is because they have a way of matching some of the other non-business tax returns to make sure that businesses are reporting appropriately. And that was something that we couldn't do. So there ostensibly should be some, in the long run, there should be some gains from them doing it if they do it properly.
My last question has to do with the gasoline tax. And on page 209, I see that the budgeted revenue for the gasoline tax this year is $1,750,000. How did we, I guess I'm a little bit surprised to see a $100,000 increase over this year because we are seeing higher gas prices and maybe some less use. I'm just kind of curious how you arrived at that number.
Well, we did have a couple of particularly bad years economically where people did not travel as much to shop, people did not use their vehicles as much because everybody was to a great extent holding their breath. So, I think it is logical that there will be more utilization unless it gets up in the $5 range. I think that people are adjusting to the higher rates and although there's a little bit of seepage or erosion in the national numbers, I think some of the Tennessee numbers ought to look pretty good. We do have a growing population where some states don't.
More people.
But I
It's
might
a trade-off of growth versus.
Yeah, I see that.
But I might also add, remember the special census. The state estimates how much that it will get per head, per population, and that number is calculated at least in part based on population.
And that would be
So
better.
the
That would be better.
additional
So we get that,
population, we
yeah.
think will help us there.
We've tried to be overall in this budget pretty conservative about that impact of the census. We realized some of it, but we've tried to be on the conservative side so that we're maybe a little better off a year from now when we look at those and see the reality. But we'll have to kind of wait and see completely the impact. But we made the best estimate we could.
Yeah, I'd like to offer now that I will not filibuster with additional questions if someone were to come up with a motion.
Oh, but
Since I'm not a voting member,
maybe I better at least ask if our other aldermen that are here, and I apologize for not doing that first, have any comments or questions?
That's right, but what happens now to this, not having been through this before, what happens now?
We will recommend this to the
We'll
full board.
recommend it.
And that's it?
This is scheduled for a first reading at your next meeting, May 24th, and then second and third reading in June. So it will be adopted by the end of June for the new fiscal year, July 1.
So it won't be discussed doesn't have to be discussed at a work session?
We'll bring it to the regular meeting.
Yeah.
We can put it on a work session if folks would like. But typically after, this committee has worked on it really for months. Since February, they've had departments coming up here and going through specific line items and issues. And so really rely on this committee to then make a recommendation or forward it on to the board. We will have the public hearing in June on the 14th, and then final adoption on the 28th. So that's the schedule. We're always glad to bring it up in any other way if you'd like to discuss it.
Well, and I think too, since this is being recorded or broadcast on TV, that we need to also say what you just said, Eric, is that we have been, and Margaret, you were at a lot of those meetings, where we have the department heads come up, and we go through the department budget line by line and study those, ask a lot of questions. So we've gone through streets, we've gone through planning, and we've gone through HR and legal, and whatever, all the departments. And spent a lot of time on it. I just want to say I think y'all have done a great job, and I think the department's heads have done a fabulous job this year, holding the budget and increasing it just a little bit. Sorry, we can't increase it more to get some of these things done. And I think the presentation has been extremely helpful. Everything that's given to us, especially this book, this final book here, has been extremely helpful because it is so clear, it's well put out. Your explanations have been extremely helpful, and this is like night and day compared to when I was first on the budget committee years ago. So thank
The
you.
full budget documents on the website, folks.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
good
access
too. They
that.
needed to say that.
We will put this presentation on the website as
Oh,
well,
very
so
good.
folks can see that
This
summary
presentation.
level.
That's
The one
good.
I just gave you, we'll put that on
That's
there as
great.
well.
That's
So
excellent.
it'll be available for citizens to take a look at. Again, the public hearing will be the June 14th meeting as part of your regular board meeting that night.
Yeah.
And then final adoption
And
later in June.
we do want to say that our funding of the appropriations and the other contracted services have stayed the same this year, where we have had, sometimes we have had to make some reductions, but they're continuing as they were funded this past year.
Is this going to the next voting session then?
This would,
Well,
first
we-
reading
all
would
right.
be at the May
May
24th,
May
or May
24th.
24th meeting, yeah.
Well, I want to make a motion that we accept the budget as is, and we move it to the May 24th BOMA for vote.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Got to get that dated.
So that's our voting, and then our
Sure what that
Our
date was.
other, our monthly reports for information only. And I think then the next Budget and Finance Committee meeting, since I believe we've probably covered everything, there's not a need to have another meeting this week? Is that the
We had some time
consensus?
reserved, but if
Hallelujah.
we've done, we didn't know if we needed other budget time, so that's great.
So we'll just have our regular
You're so
scheduled
efficient.
meeting the next month
In
then.
June, yeah, third Thursday in June.
Well, thank you to
Thank
everybody.
you.
Appreciate
Motion
all the
to
work.
adjourn?
And as someone said, there's not enough new money to fight over this year.
Yeah,
That's
that's
right.
right. Motion to adjourn?
Okay. Second,
Adjourn.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
You got your